Warm welcome to this lecture series on organizational behavior. We are in the second chapter, which is on perception, and today we are going to see the second section of this perception chapter. I'll quickly summarize what happened in the previous lecture in this chapter. So this is the outline of the entire chapter. We also defined what is perception, and we try to understand why it is important to know about this idea of perception, especially in workplace. So perception being a subjective phenomena, it can lead to miscommunication among people, or misunderstanding or miscommunication among people. Perception is defined as how we give meaning to sensory stimuli by organizing and interpreting it. So like I said earlier, it is very subjective, and this subjectivity can lead to some problems in organizations. So that is why it is very important to understand this idea of perception. We also looked at the basic elements of perception. So perception broadly involves selection and screening of information and then organization of stimuli. So we select certain stimuli around us, we screen the information available to us, and we select only few stimuli, and then whatever stimuli we encountered or we selected, we organize them in a certain way. And also perception as a process has different steps. So the first step in perception, which is perceptual selection, depends on various factors. So like I said, there are many factors or many stimulus which are available in our environment, in our day-to-day life, but we select only few of them. So what decides which of those stimuli will be selected? Broadly, these factors can be classified into two categories. One, external factors, two, internal factors. So external factors are factors associated with the stimulus itself. So we looked at what are the characteristics of stimulus which can make us choose only those stimulus in comparison with other stimulus available. Internal factors are factors associated with the individual himself or herself. For example, your motivation at that level or your interest in a certain area will make you choose to perceive certain things available in the environment, in your external environment. So this is what we saw in the previous lecture in perception. Now we are going to look at the second important element in perception, which is perceptual organization. Like I said, we choose certain stimuli from the environment. So once we have the set of stimuli, we organize them. We try to group them together, or we try to give them some order so that some meaningful interpretation can be made. So according to Gestalt's theory, I also explained the Gestalt school or Gestalt theories in the previous lecture. So according to Gestalt theory, we use many principles to organize external stimuli or sensory stimuli. So these are some of the important methods humans use to organize perceptual stimuli or sensory stimuli. Okay, so the first principle is perceptual grouping. So humans especially have this tendency to group certain stimuli together in a certain way to make sense out of it. For example, in grouping there are many specific methods we use. Many of them are unconsciously we use these methods. The first one is proximity. For example, when there is a stimuli, a group of stimuli, we look at, or we try to group them based on the proximity, how close they are. For example, in the first line, you see two black blocks together. You won't see the white spaces as one entity. You will see only black bars as one entity. You see a pattern, and that pattern depends on the proximity of a certain kind of stimuli. Similarly, the second perceptual grouping principle is similarity, which means similar looking or similar stimuli which are of similar nature or similar appearance, we group them together. For example, in this example next to similarity, things which look similar, we group them together and consider them as one group. Symmetry is order. We try to group things which look like there are mirror images, or they look like, they form a geometrical order. So the example which is there, you can understand. And also the fourth one is good continuation. So we group things based on the perception of flow in the stimuli. So for example, the example which was given in this slide, a good continuation denotes, even though there is a gap between these two lines, we perceive them as together. The line which is there, 1 and 2, we perceive them together rather than 2 and 3. Okay, because 1 and 2, you see them flowing as a continuous stimuli, even though there is a gap in between. And also common fate means if you see them to be in the same direction, when you see the stimuli flowing in the same direction or in the same manner, we see them as one group. Okay. There are a lot of examples given about this. I'll give you a link. You can read many of these things with examples. Okay. The second principle of perceptual organization is perceptual closure. So perceptual closure means in a particular stimuli, or when we have a group of stimuli, even though there is gap in between, we try to fill those gaps. We try to close those gaps. So if you can read the sentence given in the slide, you can understand. We tend to ignore gaps and complete the whole structure together. So for example, let's say you have a telephone call, okay, and during the call there is some break in the call. Even though there are some break in the call, we try to fill information based on our understanding of what is the conversation is all about. Okay, so we fill the missing information to create familiar shapes and images. But again, this can lead to serious problems in some cases, because when you fill in the gaps without actually receiving those stimuli, you may fill them with wrong assumptions. Okay, so for example, that is where many of these illusions happen. We try to fill in those gaps through our mental imagery, okay, which leads to false kind of perception. Figure and ground denotes that, so the third perceptual organizational principle is figure and ground. So figure and ground is based on what we consider as figure, which is the object which we are perceiving. All the other things become the background, and we perceive the background as one uniform group of stimulus. So we don't perceive, so let's say in this picture, in the slide, if you see the vase, you will see the background as something which is blank. Okay, other way around, if you see the face, two faces in the picture, the contours of the vase becomes it loses its significance. You don't see the vase because you see it as one space where nothing is there. Okay, you only see the face. So this principle says that depending on what we choose to see, all the other things become blur. The background things become blur. So again, this can lead to problems, because we consider something as important, all the other things become unimportant. But sometimes things we neglect to see as background can also be important information. Perceptual constancy means humans and also sometimes some animals have this tendency to see constancy of a certain image. Okay, so in this example, the door which you see it as a rectangle, isn't it? Even though in a very strict sense it may not be a rectangle in the third picture. The third picture, it is not a rectangle, probably it's a parallelogram. Okay, so even though the shape of the rectangle changes, we consider even in the third image it to be a door. So we won't confuse ourselves by saying the shape has changed, so it cannot be a door. Okay, so we tend to have this tendency to see constancy in what we perceive. So we don't see change that easily. Okay, so the problem with perceptual organization principles is optical illusions. Sometimes, even though it helps them to interpret information or helps us make sense out of varied kind of stimulus, which otherwise, if you don't organize them, it becomes chaotic. But to make sense out of it, we organize them in a certain way, and even though there are gaps, we fill them. Even though there is no consistency, we tend to see them to be consistent. Even though they may not group together, even though there is no continuity, we try to see continuity or order. So it is good because it helps us to collectively group those stimulus together and make sense out of it. But the problem is sometimes it can lead to illusion. Illusion means something which is not there, but we see things. For example, in the first picture, the picture on your left, you see that red color circle in the left side to be bigger than the circle in the right side. In fact, in both cases, the red color circle is the same size, so there is no size difference of the red circle. But depending on the background, we see the size to be different. Similarly, in the second picture, some of you have seen this. It's a very famous optical illusion. Depending on what is the background you choose, you will see a young lady or you will see a old woman. Okay, so this is not just about physical stimulus. Even in social context, many of these things hold true. Okay, like I said, law of closure. You will try to fill in information. So you would have interacted with someone for many years. So what you think is, you assume certain things to be true about this person because you think we have been continuously interacting with this person, so we know this person well. Okay. Similarly, we tend to look at consistency in what we perceive. You may not, things happening around you or your friend, you becoming old. We never feel that we become old if you look at the mirror. Okay. Why? Because consistently we are looking at that same image and we think we are the same person whom we are 10 years back or 15 years back, which is not true. We also change as individuals. So we fail to see change in ourselves or in others. So these are the problems which can happen because of the wrong use of perceptual organization principles. Okay. So we move on to the social perception part. Till now we looked at the mechanism of perception or the mechanism of sensory perception. Now we are going to look at perception in the social context. So what is social perception? Social perception means the process of combining, integrating and interpreting information about others to gain an accurate understanding of them. It can also be about ourselves. Okay. So throughout our life we are in this process of understanding others. So or we have this tendency to know about others. It's a kind of a curiosity we have about understanding people around us or phenomena around us. So what we do in this curiosity, we try to collect information, combine integration, integrate them, try to interpret them so that we can understand others. In fact, curiosity is a very important instinct of humans. even small children, they have this tendency to ask questions, seek for information, go out and try out new things and things like that, which is nothing but curiosity. So why we have this curiosity? To understand the world around us, the people around us, which is very normal. Okay, but sometimes what can happen is this process, we may, like I said, in perceptual organization, we may use wrong cues or we may use wrong processes, which can lead to failure or inaccurate understanding of others or the environment around us. When I say environment, what is happening around us, people around us, things around us, and things like that. Okay. In social perception, I'm also going to explain something called attribution. Attribution means, it's a tendency of human beings, which involves trying to understand the cause behind others' behavior. It can also be your own behavior. So we have this tendency to see why people behave the way they behave. Is it because of internal factors or it is because of external factors? For example, if somebody is like very irritated kind of a person, so you want to know whether this person is a person who is always irritated, or as a person is irritated, or because of other reasons. Okay, so we always have this tendency to give cause to others' behavior and also our own behavior. So these two things, in fact there are many other things in social perception, but in this chapter we are going to look at only these two things, which is one, understanding others' behavior and attributing cause to behavior. Okay, so one important element in social perception is social identity. Okay, or identity per se is a very important element in perception. So identity is, where do I identify myself? In other words, how do I define myself? Or it is the answer to the question, who am I? Okay, or if it is about, when it is about others, it is about who's this person. Okay, so we ask this question, isn't it? Like if you meet someone for the first time, we'll try to understand them in terms of who are they. By looking at them, we'll try to judge their gender, we try to judge their age, we try to judge their religious background or language background, and sometimes we also ask, what is your job, who are your parents, and things like that. So all these things help us give some identity to that person, and also we also try to define ourselves with a certain identity. So let's do a small exercise. Okay, in fact many times we may not even think in these lines, we may not even know this is what we are trying to do, trying to find out identity or establish identity. So to understand this process, I'll give you a small exercise. Okay, so just think, close your eyes and think, and come up with 5 statements starting with I. So I is self. So for example, if you ask me to do this exercise, I'll say I am a teacher, I am a father, I am a good person, I am a man. So these are some of the things which you will write. I will write when I have to write 5 sentences. So similarly you also write 5 things describing you, which will start from I am. Okay, so I or I am. It can also be like I like dancing and things like that, but try to write things starting with I am. Okay, just take a minute, do it in a minute. I'll give you some time. Okay, I hope at least you would have thought about it in your mind, isn't it? In these sentences, how many of them are highly independent of a social group and how many of them are in relation to a social group. So what I mean is, for example, if I say, I am a good communicator, let's say, okay, so it is about me. Vis-a-vis, I am an Indian, which means I am identifying myself with a social group. So I had a choice. I would have said I'm a human. Okay, I would have identified myself with some other social group. Maybe I would have said I'm a Tamilian, which is my language identity, or I am a man, which is a gender identity. So I had options of identifying myself with many social groups, but I chose to do it with only certain social groups. Then it means those social groups are important to me. Okay, so let's say in these 5 sentences which you thought about or you wrote, how many of them are not related to any social group and how many of them are related to a social group? In fact, for many of us, we identify ourselves as a member of a social group. Okay, so that is what is social identity. We also, it's not just about ourselves, we try to do it for others also. When we try to understand or place an identity about someone or place an identity of some person we meet, we try to look at the social group which they belong to. We try to look at them like, this person is a Punjabi, this person is a male or a female, this person belongs to a certain religious group, depending on the kind of symbols they wear. Okay, so all these things we make. But the problem in social identity, establishing social identity or personal identity, is sometimes it can lead to bias. In fact, social identity theory, that's what it says. Social identity theory is a very popular theory in social psychology. In fact, I request you to read about this in internet. I will also give you some material as links. So it says, we perceive ourselves and others based on their own personal identity and also the social group in which they belong to. Okay, for example, you look at someone. Okay, so this person is tall and athletic, so that is their personal quality. Okay, so you attribute them as very strong athletic person, okay, a sports person, let's say, and also their social group. This person is a Punjabi, and you will say, okay, maybe he is like we assume that all Punjabis are athletic or very strong, very hefty built. Okay, this is one assumption we make. So this is what is social identity theory. We use both personal qualities and the social group qualities to give some identity to others and also to ourselves. But the problem with this is stereotyping. Okay, you would have heard this term stereotyping. Stereotyping means based on certain qualities of the person which belongs to their social group, we try to generalize them. Okay, in other words, stereotyping is generalizing the quality of a person or identity of the person based on their social identity. Okay, which is trying to understand this person or justify certain qualities of the person based on their social group. For example, like I said, Punjabis. Okay, so all Punjabis are strong and hefty built, or all Gujaratis are entrepreneurial. So let's say if a friend you meet, or your neighbor is a Gujarati, you think this person is a very entrepreneurial person. Okay, or South Indians are very brainy people, or things like this, or Europeans are very punctual, something like that. So if you meet a European, you think this person might be a very punctual person. Okay, so we assume certain things to be true about a person based on the social group which they belong to, again, which may not be true in all cases. For example, if somebody says I am a politician, okay, so what kind of qualities will you attach to this person's job or the role which they play? Vis-a-vis, I am a teacher, so you think this person must be of certain qualities. So this is what is stereotyping. In fact, we look at stereotyping elaborately in the next slides. But social identity, the problem with social identity is, or using social identity to define personal identity is stereotyping. There can be other biases also. Another problem with using this kind of an approach is in-group bias. So in-group bias means people who are of the same social identity, they feel they are special, more important, or they are better, or they are more capable than people of other groups. For example, let's say you are let's say I am a Tamilian. Okay, I meet two people. One person is a Tamilian and another person is, let's say, Bengali. So obviously I feel Tamilians are like all, and these two people, let's say I'm standing in a queue, two people are coming to the queue, which one person is Tamilian, one person is Bengali, and both of them break the queue, let's say. So I know this person is a Tamilian, so I will think maybe this person is in urgency, maybe some real reason why he is breaking the queue. Other person is a Bengali, I will think, because I am a Tamilian, I will think this person Bengali is like breaking the queue because he is not following the rules. So same behavior, I interpret it differently because one person belongs to a group which I belong to, another person belongs to the group which I don't belong to. Okay, so if you see this slide, if my people of my social group do something, I'll justify it saying that it is a good thing, there is a real reason behind it. If somebody else does it of this other social group, we try to label them as bad people, or they don't have responsibility and things like that. So I'll stop here. What I'm going to do now is I'll give you a homework. Okay, so next session we are going to talk about attribution of causality, which means, like I said earlier, we try to find out, or we try to understand what is the cause of others' behavior or even your own behavior. So I want you to read a bit about this. There's a theory called or just give this keyword attribution to cause. Okay, attribution of cause. So I repeat again, attribution of cause, attribution of causality. So use this keyword, search in internet and try to read a bit about what it says. Okay, and we will meet again, and then I'll explain what is it all about. Okay, so I'll stop here. Just go through the slide again so that you will understand what are the concepts we covered today. Okay, so have a nice day. See you soon.